Gaza, a small strip of land on the Mediterranean coast, home to over 2 million Palestinians. For decades, Gaza has been trapped in a cycle of conflict and suffering. Even before the devastating war of October 2023, life in Gaza was incredibly difficult. Imagine a place where unemployment is sky high, where poverty is widespread, where basic necessities like clean water and electricity are scarce. This was the reality for the people of Gaza long before the recent escalation. The Israeli blockade, in place since 2007, has severely restricted the flow of goods and people in and out of Gaza. This has crippled the economy and left many Gazans dependent on humanitarian aid. The situation in Gaza has been described as a humanitarian catastrophe. The United Nations has repeatedly warned that the enclave is on the verge of collapse. On October 7, 2023, the smoldering tensions in Gaza erupted into a full-blown war. Hamas, the militant group that controls Gaza, launched a surprise attack on Israel. The attack, which involved rockets, mortars, and ground incursions, caught Israel off guard. Hamas's stated goal was to break the Israeli blockade and secure the release of Palestinian prisoners. However, the attack was widely condemned by the international community. The attack sent shockwaves through Israel. It was a stark reminder of the country's vulnerability and the ever-present threat from Hamas. The Israeli public was outraged and demanded a swift and decisive response. Israel responded to Hamas's attack with overwhelming military force. The Israeli Air Force launched a relentless bombing campaign, targeting Hamas military infrastructure as well as civilian areas. The ground invasion followed, with Israeli troops pushing deep into Gaza. The Israeli offensive resulted in a heavy death toll among Palestinian civilians. Hospitals, schools, and residential buildings were reduced to rubble. The United Nations accused Israel of using disproportionate force and committing war crimes. Israel defended its actions, arguing that it was targeting Hamas militants and that civilian casualties were unavoidable. However, the scale of the destruction and the high number of civilian deaths raised serious questions about Israel's conduct during the war. The October 2023 war exacerbated the already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. The bombing campaign destroyed vital infrastructure, including power plants, water treatment facilities, and hospitals. The blockade was tightened, making it nearly impossible to get essential goods into Gaza. The people of Gaza faced a desperate shortage of food, water, medicine, and other basic necessities. Hospitals were overwhelmed with casualties, and many patients died due to a lack of basic medical care. The United Nations described the situation in Gaza as catastrophic and called for an immediate ceasefire and an end to the blockade. However, the fighting continued for weeks, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. Section 5. The Two-State Solution, a Distant Dream. The October 2023 war dealt a severe blow to the already fading prospects of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The war deepened the mistrust and animosity between the two sides, making a negotiated settlement seem more elusive than ever. The expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, the continued blockade of Gaza, and the lack of progress on key issues such as Jerusalem and refugees have all contributed to the demise of the two-state solution. The international community has long supported the two-state solution as the only viable path to peace. However, the lack of political will on both sides and the continued violence have made this goal seem increasingly unrealistic. Section 6, the four enclaves, a new reality for Palestinians. With the two-state solution on life support, some analysts argue that a new reality is emerging on the ground, a four-enclave solution. Under this scenario, Palestinians would be confined to four separate and unequal territories: Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Israel proper. This fragmented and segregated reality would leave Palestinians with limited autonomy and control over their own lives. It would also perpetuate the cycle of conflict and violence that has plagued the region for decades. The four-enclave solution is a bleak prospect for Palestinians. It would represent the ultimate failure of the peace process and the triumph of those who seek to maintain the status quo of occupation and inequality. Section 7. Regional ramifications. The conflict's impact on Syria. The Israel-Gaza conflict had significant regional ramifications, particularly for neighboring Syria. The war led to an escalation of tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, the Lebanese Shia militant group that is allied with Iran and Syria. Israel carried out airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Syria, while Hezbollah responded with rocket fire into northern Israel. The fighting threatened to drag Syria further into the conflict and destabilize the region. The spillover of the conflict into Syria highlighted the interconnectedness of the region and the potential for even a localized conflict to escalate into a wider war. It also underscored the destabilizing role of regional actors like Iran and Hezbollah. Section 8. The international community, a mute spectator. The international community's response to the Israel-Gaza conflict was widely criticized as being inadequate and ineffective. The United Nations Security Council was paralyzed by divisions among its permanent members, with the United States blocking any meaningful action. While many countries condemned the violence and called for a ceasefire, concrete steps to end the fighting or address the underlying causes of the conflict were lacking. The international community's failure to act decisively only emboldened the parties to the conflict and prolonged the suffering of civilians. The impotence of the international community in the face of the Israel-Gaza conflict raised serious questions about its ability to prevent or resolve such conflicts in the future. It also highlighted the double standards that often plague the international system, with powerful states like Israel seemingly immune from accountability for their actions. Section 9. Seeking a path forward. Is there a solution to the Gaza crisis? The October 2023 war in Gaza was a tragedy for all involved. It resulted in the deaths of thousands of people, the displacement of millions, and the destruction of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure. The war also deepened the political and social divisions that make a lasting peace so elusive. Finding a solution to the Gaza crisis will require a fundamental shift in the political dynamics of the region. It will require an end to the Israeli occupation, the lifting of the blockade on Gaza, and a just resolution to the refugee issue. It will also require both sides to make difficult compromises and to recognize the humanity of the other. Ultimately, the only way to break the cycle of violence and achieve a lasting peace is through dialogue, reconciliation, and a shared commitment to a better future.